I'd like to call the Monday, September 23rd, 2019. Whoops, no, wrong place. Wrong thing. The Monday, May 11, 2020 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission to order. Did I get the date right that time? Yes, I did. By Zoom, and we'll start with the roll call, please. Tim Gilbert is excused, I believe, unless he sneaked on. Nope. I'm Sid Bremer, so I am present, substituting for Tim in my capacity as vice chair. Alder Veronica Corpus-Dax. Thank you, Veronica. And Commissioner Lisa Hanson.
Present.
Thanks, Lisa. Commissioner Jacob Miller. Jake.
Present.
And Commissioner Randall Petrosky.
Present.
Okay. We need a motion to approve our minutes, please.
I move to approve the minutes.
And these are the minutes from the August 12, 2019 meeting, and the second was by Commissioner Hanson. Stacks. Okay.
Corpus-Dax.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving those minutes, please raise your hands because I can see you all. Hey, we've got a unanimous vote there. Okay, are there any opposed? Okay. And those are for the August 12th, 2019. And we need an approval of the agenda, and actually should have done that first. Yeah, I have a motion. So move from Veronica Corpus-Dax, and a second. Thank you, Lisa Hanson, Commissioner Hanson. Then we need to go to our first order of business, which is an open hearing, a public hearing. And I need to pull up that piece of my agenda here. Sorry. This is why I tried to get catnap. This is a public hearing on the request to authorize the conditional use permit, a CUP, for a single-family home in a very density residential district at 827 9th Street, submitted by Shelley Laments of Laments Construction as the applicant. This public hearing has been properly posted, and public notification has been published in the Green Bay Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or are only providing information in this matter, and then offer us your comments and concerns. We do ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and I believe that is thanks to our help from Shelby Harley and Director Kevin Vonk, who will let you in for purpose of speaking. You must, and please do address your comments to myself. Comments can be limited to 5 minutes if we get in trouble on time, but we'll just start off seeing how it goes. So this public hearing is now open, and interested parties who wish to speak, first of all, in favor, would you indicate so by raising your hands?
I think, Madam Chair, I think we're going to give just a quick staff overview, and then we'll open the public forum for discussion. So I'm going to bring up, I think, the PowerPoint slide just to have that discussion, and then we'll open the public hearing just so we get a better context of what we're discussing here tonight.
Thank you very much for the reminder, Kevin.
Sure. Just 1 second here. And I should be able to share this screen. All right. I think, is this what we're looking for here?
This is the one, yeah, I can give a real brief overview and,
Sure.
and then we go to the public hearing. So
Great.
again, my name is Paul Newmeyer. I'm the zoning administrator for the city of Green Bay. And this is a request for a conditional use permit for a single family use in a very density residential property. So this property is located on the southeast corner of 9th Street and South Norwood. It's currently a vacant lot. There was a single family home there at one time, but it was removed in 2015. This area mainly is single family homes when you look to the east, north, and kind of northwest. West across South Norwood is the old Norwood School, which has been converted to an assisted living facility. Kevin, if you just want to advance the slides, please. So this is the comprehensive plan. Actually, the comp plan recommends low density residential here. It, as you'll see in the next slide, currently has a varied density residential, which is like a multi-family type zoning. So this request is certainly in keeping with the comprehensive plan. This property is currently owned by the redevelopment authority of the city, and it's part of a program for infill lots to create a single family home on this site. The next couple of slides will just show an example of the proposed single family home that will be constructed on that site. This is the site plan showing the basic layout of the single family unit and a detached garage. And the next slide will show an elevation of the property, of the buildings. There we go. Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Thank you. The floor is now open for interested parties who wish to speak in favor of this proposal. Kevin, do you see any?
I do not. I will maybe just take 1 second to unmute everyone for a moment. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this proposal?
Is there anybody who wishes to speak opposed to the proposal? And is there anybody who wishes to speak to provide information about the proposal?
Okay, I do not see any hands, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I will simply repeat this question as required by law. Does anybody wish to speak? Is there anybody who wishes to speak? Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this matter? Seeing and hearing none, this public hearing is now closed, and we will proceed to the regular order of business and the consideration as item 2 on our agenda with possible action on the request to authorize this conditional use permit for a single family home in a very density residential district at 827 9th Street, submitted by Shelley Lemens Construction applicant. And Paul, is there anything you wish to add by way of staff report for us?
Not as far as a report, no. The staff is recommending approval of the request subject to the condition within your agenda.
Okay, are there any questions for Paul from the commission?
Chair, this is Alder Brian Johnson.
Yes.
Just a question, Paul. I have no opposition to the project. However, I do know that the properties adjacent to this particular piece of land oftentimes experience frequent ponding or flooding in their backyards. So I'm just wondering if with this particular CUP, well, let me back up. One question, I guess, is when a new project proposal like this is submitted, is it pretty standard or customary for sump pumps to be hooked up to mini sewer or the regular sewer system? And if not, is that a requirement that we could make so that way we're not continuing to contribute to the extensive ponding that occurs currently in the yards adjacent to this one?
I don't know at this point. They haven't made a formal submittal for a building permit, so I don't know all the ins and outs of the project, so to speak. So this is, I guess, strictly for the land use. I think those issues would be addressed possibly at the permitting time.
Okay, so at permitting time, though, would we have the ability to mandate the hookup, or would that have to occur with the CUP?
I don't know that that's a condition of approval necessarily, because I can't speak to that without having more detail or what they're proposing. I don't know the details, so to speak.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Alder Johnson. Anything else that you wish to ask?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just emphasize that I think when that permitting process comes in, you know, I would like us to, I mean, it's only $500 to hook up to eliminate, you know, the continuing contribution, I guess, to the flooding in that area. So wherever it seems most appropriate to try to include that requirement, whether it's here or during the permitting process, I just want to make sure that if we approve the CUP as is, that we don't lose that opportunity to make that requirement during the permitting process.
I can certainly note that comment, and I can talk to the inspectors about that when that plan comes in, and we can see if it's what the process is at that point.
Okay, thank you.
And let me ask Director Vonk, is that something that we should consider as an amendment to this proposal?
No, not this particular proposal, given that because the conditional use is dealing more with the use issue and not the particular, you know, dimensional requirements. We don't have necessarily, this was conceptual, but we don't have a permit on which to act. It would not be appropriate. But with that, I think just, you know, noting that in terms of our review for our notes, we can go through with that to respect Alder Johnson's request. You know, in us, we'd have to look at something, you know, we will for this particular piece. It's something maybe we could look particular over other projects. But in terms of conditioning this particular permit, that would not be an appropriate motion on that. We'd have to look at it through the site plan review process.
Okay. And Alder Johnson, I can reassure you that the Plan Commission has been wonderful or the Plan Department has been excellent at site review. So that will be attended to. Thank you very much for the concern.
Yeah, and I'm content with that. I suspect that the builder would voluntarily comply with that request, given the cost to really make a positive improvement. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on the commission with a further question for Paul Neumeyer? Okay, I'd ask Director Vonk to open the mic so we can find out if anybody wishes to speak on this proposal.
All right.
Oh,
everyone should be unmuted.
Okay. And I don't hear anybody asking to speak, so I guess we don't need a motion to open the floor. And I would invite any comments by the commissioners then. Might be time for a motion.
I would move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Is there a second? Second from Alder Corpus Stacks. Then we can vote on the request to authorize the conditional use permit for a single family home in a very density residential district at 827 9th Street, submitted by Shelley Laments Construction. And Kevin, how best to take votes here?
If you would like to just go through and, you know, do a roll call vote by commissioner, I think that would probably be the easiest.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Alder Corpus Stacks. In favor, Commissioner Hanson? In favor, she's nodding. I can see it. Commissioner Jake Miller.
In favor.
Thank you. Commissioner Randy Petrosky.
In favor.
And Commissioner Sid Brummer, and I'm in favor as well. So it passes unanimously. That will go before the City Council on what date?
That will be at our City Council next Tuesday, the 19th. Again, there'll be a virtual meeting, but it'll be next Tuesday, the 19th at 6 p.m.
And in case the initiator or the applicant is not here, Paul, will you make sure that they are aware of that?
I will, yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda then is a public hearing on the request to rezone a 10-foot wide strip of low-density residential zoning to highway commercial C2 zoning located at 1828 South Ashland Avenue, submitted by Anthony, I believe it's Weed, it might be Wide, Dino Stop LLC property owner. And again, Paul, if you would be so good as to orient us to this particular issue.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a sister request to one that the Plan Commission saw in November of last year. And this request is very similar in the sense that it's dealing with a small strip of zoning that fronts along South Norwood. So this property is in the northwest corner of South Ashland and Lombardi Avenue. It's the Dino Stop. And as you might have, it ran pretty much the length of South Norwood, south of Victory Boulevard. Now the request is to reduce that to, in essence, to zero from 10 feet, which was previously approved. So I think you're somewhat familiar with the site. Kevin, we can just run through the other slides real quick. With the comprehensive plan and the zoning. Right, so it calls for neighborhood commercial. This is the comprehensive plan. And this is the actual zoning. This is the majority of the gas station has an existing highway commercial zoning. You can see that strip of R1. So that was a change from 25 feet down to 10 feet last year. And now the request is to go down to zero. So in essence, the entire property for Dino Stop would go to highway commercial or C2. The issue with that is the full commercial expansion of the site, as well as the driveway that is along South Norwood, providing access to the site. So that is the, I guess, the brief overview at this point. I can answer questions at the next item.
Okay. With that in mind, I'd like to call the public hearing to order. It has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Green Bay Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is once again interested in hearing public comments on this subject agenda item. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you remember to state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor or oppose or are only providing information in this matter, and then please share with us your comments or concerns. We ask that you provide testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. And once again, I would ask Director Bonk to turn on the microphone so we can find out if there is anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this proposal.
Yes, I believe the applicant, Mr. Weed, is online and would like to address the Plan Commission.
Very good, Mr. Weed. And if you would please tell us your address and then your concerns and opinions.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tony Weed. I live at 514 Randall Avenue in De Pere, and I am the owner of the Dino Stop location. Thanks for having me tonight. We were here last fall in order to look at our redevelopment of that corner. We have the opportunity to redevelop and enhance the location by putting in a Little Caesars restaurant. And in doing so, the Little Caesars going with the times, we were requesting to have a drive-through in order to facilitate the restaurant. So when we were in the hall, we discussed just the options in order for us to have a drive-through, and the Planning Commission determined to reduce the zoning, that strip, from 25 feet to 10 feet. And so we moved forward with planning for the Little Caesars restaurant. I have had conversations and met with the neighbors across the street that would be affected, and got very favorable feedback from them. And when we submitted the site plan here this spring, Mr. Newmeyer had told us about that driveway on the north side that was problematic in our site plan. And we have been all along expecting to be able to keep the driveway with this proposal for the drive-through and the redevelopment, as that's the only way for our customers to enter the drive-through. There really isn't any other feasible option in order for the drive-through to work. And we do, like we had explained in the Planning Commission in the fall, we do need the drive-through in order for the development for the Little Caesars. So we are just hoping and here to just ask for a solution to be able to continue to use that driveway. Kevin Vonk and I had some discussions, and we even talked about the idea of making that driveway perhaps entrance only off of Norwood. Right now it is being used as an exit and an entrance. I would certainly be agreeable to that, because that would be sufficient for our customers to be able to come into the drive-through window. So thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to answer questions. And obviously this is very important to us in order for this to work for our development there. So.
Thank you. Since this is the public hearing, we will reserve any questions we might have for you and come back to you during the period of discussion and possible action. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Comments. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor of this proposal?
Madam Chair, I do not see any hands raised.
Thank you. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposal?
Again, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay. And anybody wishing to offer information about this proposal?
No hands raised. So I think we may just unmute all the mics just in case there's anybody else wanting to speak.
Good. And I will ask, is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this matter? As the mics are about to get unmuted. Not quite yet.
Okay, we are unmuted.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this matter? And for a third time, anyone else who wishes to speak on this matter? Okay, we can remute the mics then. And public hearing. This is a slightly awkward combination of motions, but we have the public hearing so that we can know in advance what the concerns are, the range of concerns that are out there in our audience, in the public. We will now move to the agenda item number 4, which is consideration with possible action on the request to rezone that 10-foot wide strip of low-density residential to highway commercial located at 1828 South Ashland Avenue, submitted by Anthony Weed, Dino Stop, LLC property owner. And I would ask Paul what you would have to add to your earlier report at this time.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few more slides I wanted to share with the commission, and maybe you've seen a few of these before. This is right here. You can kind of see where it says subway. That's the principal use there, and then the Little Caesars would go on just left of that, so to speak. So that is the general location again, South Norwood. And then the next slide will give you kind of a street view perspective where the pickup window would be put on the west side of that building with the access from the driveway. Staff has concerns, as we did originally back last fall, with the rezoning. However, that was resolved. Our concern still remains with the existing driveway that's there. We believe that is a non-compliant driveway or an illegal driveway, basically. And we're concerned about zoning trespass, basically, that by retaining the drive or increasing that zoning, there will be increased traffic and infringement onto the neighborhood. So as a result of that, staff is recommending denial of the request.
Thank you, Mr. Newmeyer. Do any members of the commission or any alders have questions for Mr. Newmeyer? Commissioner Hanson.
So I feel like we talked about this pretty extensively when it came through back in November. And that driveway that's to the north, that was part of a single family property the owner purchased, and then they demolished the house. It was old, and then they just continued using that driveway. So nothing has changed since November in regards to that, and that being possibly not a correct use of that property in that driveway.
I'm not aware of anything else physically that's changed. No, I think it's still the same issue that we had back in fall, yes.
Is there any way to fix that, or is that just always going to be an unapproved use of that driveway and that property?
Well, I think under the current rezoning, if it goes to C2, it'll become a compliant driveway by kind of de facto, so to speak. If it's denied, then it's an enforcement issue that we'd have to contend with the property owner.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of the commission with questions?
I think just to elaborate on Commissioner Hanson's question, I think that's why we're here today, is that the applicant has a potential project improvement to his structure. In order to be able to use that driveway, the property owner needs that zoning to make that driveway for commercial use, to make it compliant. If it's not provided for, then this is something, generally we're complaint driven when it comes to enforcement actions. And this has been something that has not been brought up in terms of a complaint. But now that we are aware of it, if the zoning is not amended to accommodate this use, Mr. Newmeyer is right, then we would have to follow through with enforcement orders and then asking for that driveway to be removed. And really, it goes back to a clause in our zoning code that requires, when a single family use is discontinued, primarily that the apron be removed and that curb be reestablished. And so they could potentially use the pavement on the private side, for part of their operations, but that apron would need to be removed and the curb would need to be reinstalled so that you could not functionally use it as a driveway anymore. And so that's, based on the applicant's dilemma, I guess, in terms of getting that site plan approved. Either one of the two things needs to happen, is that the zoning needs to get changed so you can use the driveway to accommodate that drive-through for the Little Caesars. Or if not, that driveway needs to come out as part of their site plan so we can approve the site plan.
And Director Vonk, approving the site plan then, though, would be without the driveway, without the drive-through.
So if the motion to, if the request were denied, then in order for us to approve the site plan, the applicant would need to submit a site plan that shows removal of that driveway apron in order to make it compliant.
What I was trying to understand was whether or not removing the driveway apron would also, in effect, nix the drive-through. In aspect, the applicant could still have a drive-through. With that, the traffic flow would be required to come, from different directions. I think I could probably put back up the aerial shot.
probably here, right, is best. If the driveway were removed, then the traffic would have to enter from the cul-de-sac here, and basically could not use this piece anymore, and all traffic would have to come in and out of here, use the driveway, and then exit out this way.
Okay, are there any other questions from the commissioners? Willing to bet that we will want to hear from Tony Weed in response to that suggestion.
I think Mr. Petrosky had a question.
Thank you. Commissioner Petrosky, please.
Suggestion for the planners. The proponent of the proposal indicated he had some discussions this morning regarding a potential one-way use for that driveway. What are the planners' thoughts on that?
So I can offer one idea is I think we'd definitely be in favor of having that, given I think the main concern would be having traffic cut down on Norwood. I think the reason for the zoning strip is to protect commercial encroachment on Norwood Avenue, and there's residential properties to the west of Norwood. Having a one-way driveway, I think by then, if customers were at, I'll go back to the PowerPoint. If customers were at the Shell station and wanted to go through the drive-through, they would be going north on Norwood and coming in, through that driveway and using the drive-through and then exiting back out south. So that could potentially, cut down on traffic going around the block into the cul-de-sac or coming back out onto Norwood. So we would be in favor of it. But I think it's one of the things, just like the previous request, we can't condition the zoning on those particular things, those dimensional requirements. We'd have to depend on the applicant, saying that they were going to do that in the site plan. They would be entitled, if it met code, to potentially have an in and out access. And so at this point, you'd be depending on the applicant to actually submit a site plan that did that. We could not condition that as part of the zoning. I think Commissioner Hanson.
Commissioner.
Thank you. So I just want to remember, when they came in November, weren't they asking for all of that to be zoned? That whole buffer, that 25 feet? And our compromise at that time was, instead of giving them the full 25 feet, was to give them 10 feet. I just want to make sure I'm remembering it correctly, because I really feel like we agonized over this, and we wanted to keep the buffer, but we also wanted to give them room to work with. And I feel like that 10-foot was for compromise.
That fits my memory as well, that we reserved the 10 for the RR1, and we're willing to give them the 15. Does that fit the memory of staff?
It does.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Any other questions or comments at this point from the commission?
Chair, it's Alder Johnson.
Yes.
I am not a commissioner, but if it's appropriate, I just have a few questions.
Please, it is definitely appropriate. As a council member, you are a member of every committee, I believe.
Thank
for
you.
these purposes.
Paul, so if I understand correctly, that driveway right now is currently in use. It's an actively used driveway?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. And have you received any feedback or negative or otherwise from the residents in that area regarding the use of that driveway?
Not related to the driveway, no.
Okay. And the reason I ask that question is because it seems to me then that what's being asked for by the applicant is really just to maintain status quo, with the caveat, of course, that that the establishment of the drive-through would basically request cars to actually use that driveway now, as opposed to entrance from another direction. And if we were to grant this zoning change, would it only apply to this? Because if I recall, the last time this came, there was some concern about that change needing to be applied to the other properties along that corridor. Could you elaborate on that?
That's correct. The original request last fall had the entire strip going up to the next street, yes. But the staff removed that request. It was just for the dyno stop that they addressed.
So the request that we have before us right now would only apply to that strip that's outlined for the dyno stop.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And I think that it's almost become this scenario where sometimes it becomes almost a little bit taboo to talk about things like cars on roads. And in this particular scenario, I don't see the Little Caesars generating the type of volume that would inherently be disruptive. And I'd certainly welcome if the applicant could speak to that a little bit when the commission chooses to open the floor. I could certainly see like the placement of McDonald's in there and in that street being of concern, but given the amount of square feet that are available for this particular business, I'm hesitant to think that it's going to generate the type of traffic volume that would be inherently disruptive to a neighborhood. Perspective on that, and certainly Paula's staff, if you have feedback in that regard, I would welcome to hear that as well.
Okay, is there any staff response to Alder Johnson's comment? We will certainly follow up with it with the applicant. Yes, Mr. Newmeyer.
We certainly did not require a traffic analysis, so I don't know about the trip generation here necessarily. I think it's more of a principal issue about separating the commercial from the residential. And I think the collateral damage is the traffic that'll be going down South Norwood Avenue.
Thank you. Any other questions for the staff from the commission or from an alder? Yes, Commissioner Hanson.
Sorry, I'm full of questions. So in the previous request, we were looking at taking that way from where the dyno stop is to whatever that next street is behind it. Is that correct? That entire yellow strip all the way up that entire block. Thank you, Kevin.
Right. So Mr. Weed actually made a request just for 1828, very similar to the request he made this time. Staff just took the initiative and we expanded that request to go up to Victory just because we thought if we're going to eliminate it, we'd want to maybe consider it for the entire stretch. But after looking at it, we felt it was important to maintain that separation in some shape or fashion. So I think that's where the compromise kind of came in. Again, we removed this section to the north, but Mr. Weed's zoning strip there was compromised, where it was changed from 25 to 10.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Then I'd like a motion to open the floor.
Move to open the floor.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. And a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Miller. Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. I can see you. Ta-da, we've got a unanimous vote on that. And so we need to entertain any questions from the floor. And I think that may need to start with Tony Weed. Sounds like we have some questions for you, Mr. Weed.
Okay.
Thank you. So if you could respond, first of all, to the various suggestions that have been made or your thoughts about how we might be able to resolve this.
Well, okay, thank you. So in our meeting in the fall, I just assumed, and I think it was my understanding that we assumed that the driveway was going to stay, or at least that was the understanding, because that's the only real way to facilitate customers coming into the drive-through. The alternative is if we had a drive-through and the driveway had to be taken out, that's going to result in cars going down the street and passing additional houses to the north, and then taking a right, and then taking another right and coming down that access road. Mm-hmm. So in my discussions with Little Caesars, that just doesn't work, having cars going all the way around that whole city block. In addition, there's going to be crisscrossing traffic in that back behind our location with employee parking, people driving through that back parking lot and so forth. So I think it's from the neighborhood standpoint, it will certainly be less traffic and no traffic really going past all of those houses to the north. As far as additional traffic for the location, do I think Little Caesars will do more than Subway? Perhaps. I do think that we are going to gain more traffic from the customers that are already coming into our store. I don't think it's going to be any sort of drastic increase in traffic. Subways are very busy. In addition, I think having the pickup window and a driveway to facilitate the pickup window will prevent anyone from parking on the street, which does happen now and currently, and has happened ever since we've had the store since the early 90s. So then, in other words, people will just be driving in the driveway through the pickup window and on their way. That's the new trend. Many fast foods, over 60% of their sales are through drive-throughs, which then again prevents cars from parking on the street and so forth. So the driveway is something we've kind of used dual purpose since the early 90s. We certainly didn't do anything intentionally in the early 2000s. In other words, we didn't take the house down and keep the driveway against anybody's wishes. That we didn't realize that the apron needed to come out at that time, wasn't part of the demolition permit, and our excavation company did the work. So it's at this point, again, we're looking, obviously for some consideration just to continue to use the driveway. We'd be totally fine with just having it be entrance only, which certainly then would prevent any headlights for people exiting out there for the neighbors as well. So I think those are a lot of good solutions and some areas that I think could be of benefit to the neighborhood. Certainly it benefits us, but I think the city too will see a redeveloped and revamped exterior of the building, and we'll continue to keep it, well lit and safe and something that the city can be proud of too.
Thank you. Are there other commissioners with questions for Tony Weed? And I'm wondering, Alder Johnson, does that respond fully to the various concerns that you expressed, or is there anything you would like to add?
Maybe just one question for Mr. Weed. If I saw that landscape photo correctly, there's already, and I'm trying to remember, because this is my district here, there are some trees currently planted in that area. Are you amenable to, if there is the possibility to add some additional landscaping to continue to reinforce that buffer? Are you open to that?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure what would be done, but if there is an opportunity for it, I think it would be a good compromise, just to continue to create that buffer from those couple of neighborhood properties.
Yeah. So, Alderperson Johnson, so the current trees that are there on the north side are very mature. They're like an arborvitae type of thing. So they're getting really old, and a couple of them are getting a little bit sickly. So I think we could do is replace those with the same species. And that would probably provide a better coverage actually. And we could put together a plan there just to kind of start over with those trees. Yeah. If you see them, they're kind of getting, but yeah, we certainly will provide that buffer if we need to do some things there to continue with that same theme.
Okay, good.
Thank you again. Any other questions for Mr. Weed? Thank you very much, Mr. Weed.
Thank you.
We hear from anybody else who wishes to shoot or ask us any questions? And again, if you would raise your, Kevin, do you have ability to see people that we can't see? Or just to hear from them?
No, I'm seeing everybody the same. I don't see any physical hands or anybody using the raise your hand feature. So maybe I might just take a moment and unmute everybody for 1 minute.
Good idea.
1 second. So everyone's going to be unmuted.
So is there anybody who wishes to speak?
Okay, I'm not getting anything.
May I have a motion then to return, to close the floor and return to regular order of business?
Move to return to regular.
Second.
Commissioner Hanson, a second for that? Thank you, Commissioner Petrowski. I will take that hand signal as quite adequate. And all those in favor? Hands up. Thank you. Anybody objecting? Okay, then we are back in regular order of business, and I'd be interested in hearing what the various commissioners are thinking at this point. Commissioner Hanson.
So kind of going back to Alder Johnson's point about that driveway having been there for quite some time, for having it been in use for quite some time, and not having any issues with it. I think our concern going back to November was that we were looking at that entire stretch all the way to Victory, and that being all C1 properties, that any of those buildings that are currently, I think there's a chiropractor office, there was a barbecue place down there, that any of those could be torn down and we could put in commercial and then have driveways onto Norwood if we just took that buffer completely out along that entire block. I think if we can, I know that we can't necessarily tell them that they have to do landscaping or, add some landscaping for above. Between that and having it be an entrance only, and just being for that, I guess I could see it a little bit more than why we said, no, we're not giving you the full 25 feet back in November, because we were worried about those 3 other businesses to the north, possibly changing to something else. And then we've really hurt that neighbor to the west of there. So I guess I'm to it at this point. I guess those are just the thoughts that I wanted to share, going back to what Alder Johnson said.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? I can recognize hands. Thank you, Alder Corpus-Dax.
I'm in agreement here with Commissioner Hanson, looking at it again, seeing that it's not going down to the next street. I'm more okay with this. Looking at the site plan, if we don't allow them to use that driveway, I'm more concerned of the traffic coming in from behind the building, trying to get through to the drive-through. It just seems like there's more of a potential for accident to happen back there, with people trying to get to the drive-through, trying to get around to the other side of the building, those kinds of things. It just seems like it'd be cleaner for the business to have that, to be able to use that driveway.
And are you assuming that would be as a one-way driveway again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, a one-way driveway.
And I see Commissioner Hanson nodding her head as well. Do Commissioners Petrowski or Miller wish to add anything here? Commissioner Petrowski?
Yeah, my understanding, though, is that we can't put that restriction in place for the rezoning. That would have to come as part of the site plan. So that wouldn't be part of our conversation today, beyond the extent we can't do it today. And basically, we would be hoping that it is included in a site plan down the road. That being said, I'm leaning towards approving this request, given I don't want to be redundant here, but the fact that the driveway's already been in use, it's been in use for the business, and it does all, which we've already basically given a preliminary approval to at the last meeting, can go forward without this modification. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller?
I'm still pretty split on this. I was one of the ones that voted against back in November, mainly just because it's been being used out of compliance now, and I kind of don't like the fact that we're just letting that slide as well. Obviously, I don't think there was an intent, but it's an awkward situation, and there's not going to be a good solution based on what's there, and it still feels awkward and not the best. I mean, the whole reason we went down to the 10 feet was to still maintain that buffer. Well, now it just cycled back, and now the buffer is going to be gone too. So it's just taking a little inch by inch is what it feels like. And while there's been no one in the neighborhood that really seems to be against it, I really don't like opening it up when the intent of the buffer was to kind of provide that. I mean, it's going to be gone now, and it still feels uncomfortable. There still is a path to get to there via the down towards Victory. So I still think there is a way, and that may not make it feasible for the business, but it's really trying to smash a lot into a very awkward angled lot here. And you've also got a sidewalk that's going to be butted up right to there. There's going to need to be some sort of ability to keep traffic away from that sidewalk. And I don't think a couple bushes or trees are going to be what's needed there for an area that is higher in terms of foot traffic too. It's just a lot of uncomfortable things that we're trying to smash into here. And I appreciate the ingenuity of trying to make it all work. But just as I was in November, I'm uncomfortable with it, and I'll be voting against in this situation as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanson, did you want to pursue this?
Well, I just have another question for staff. If we change the zoning for that property and not for the rest of the block north of there, are we opening ourselves up to anything? If those property owners come to us and say, well, you did this for the Dino Stop, you need to do this for us as well.
I think they can be free to make an application. I think yes, it on its merits, I guess. I don't know if it sets precedent or not, but they can make a request for consideration.
I think, if anything, and I think a number of commissioners have touched on this, what we're looking at is a zoning and land use issue. And so I think in terms of, landscaping, driveway cuts, directional, those types of things, we can take the applicant at his word that he is going to do that. And just based on the conversations, I think he would deliver on things that he said he's going to do. But, the balance, right, of this commission is also to look at long-term, like once that property is zoned, it opens up, should the property be sold, for other things to happen in terms of, so long as they meet the zoning requirements, additional driveways, other things, that site could be changed in the future. And so, right, that's the test that you're dealing with here in terms of what you have today versus what is long-term in the future. I'll agree with Mr. Neumeier. I don't think it per se sets any type of precedent in terms of what is happening. We just have, again, a very unique case of dealing with something that, has been found out of compliance, and it's an old zoning tool, if you will, I think that we used before we had a lot of, dimensional and setback requirements in our current zoning code, so we don't use it anymore. But it is what it is, and that's kind of the balance test that you're looking at right here, is both short-term and long-term.
Thank you. Speaking for myself, like Commissioner Hanson, I'm finding the suggestions that Mr. Weed has made do take care of many of my concerns about traffic going all the way down the street. And I think the issue of precedent is settled by that. At this point, we do not have a strip that continues all the way down the street as part of the proposal. And if somebody that was further down the street came requesting that, it would be a different request under different circumstances. So I am at this point thinking of voting in favor of the proposal. Yes, Commissioner Miller.
Kind of going off what you were saying there, Sid, I think I'd be a little more comfortable if this was a PUD situation where we could stipulate, and also that it would expire once that particular, if the gas station did go away. In this case, I think the long-term concerns are valid because gas stations by nature are somewhat temporary. I mean, this one's been around for a long time. There are plenty that will last, but just there's no guarantee that's going to always be what it's going to be. So taking that buffer away now opens it up to whatever could potentially be. And in the location that it's at, which is a fairly valuable piece of property near Lambeau, we have to look at the future uses that could be there, not just what's there. So again, if this was a PUD situation, I think I'd be a little more comfortable making some sacrifices, but it does open it up for future, which I think is something that does need to be considered.
Following that up, is there any reason that Mr. Weed might not make an application for a PUD? Is that an alternative approach for him to take?
It could be an option. I don't know if this really is a candidate for a PUD. I think typically there's larger developments with unique situations that might qualify as a PUD. I don't know that this necessarily qualifies, but if it was denied for some reason, he certainly could come back and apply and be considered again, sure.
It does have two commercial investors involved in it, with the Little Caesars as well as the Dino Stop. That would be the one basis on which I might be inclined to accept the current recommendation not to okay it, but then to strongly urge Mr. Weed to pursue a PUD that would specify the one-way traffic and the expansion of the commercial zoning only for that space. Any other thoughts from other people on the commission?
Just to answer the question about the planned unit development, I think Mr. Neumeier is right, and then that we try and be, I guess, judicious and selective about our use of the PUDs. I think, we could PUD everything in the city and then look at certain conditions, and then, we start to erode away at our core root of just, okay, generally, what are we expecting out of some of these zones? Should this not pass, I think that could be an alternative in the future. But with that, I think, we're more comfortable in terms of looking at this parcel in and of itself. I think just based also where it's at in terms of land use. I mean, it does, again, the frontages are weird, right? You've got almost like a quad frontage of Ashland Avenue, the frontage road, Norwood Avenue, and Lombardy Avenue. And so by stopping where we did stop, I think that's why we felt comfortable with just a straight rezone versus a PUD here as well.
Any commissioners who wish to speak at this point or offer a motion?
Chair?
Yes, Alder Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I support the change, but I do have one question, perhaps to Mr. Neumeier. It said in the packet that you did receive one call from a neighbor, from an affected property owner. Are you able to disclose the nature of that conversation?
Sure. It was a property owner to the north. She had inquired about a transitional yard between the residence, which is just to the north. And I indicated that it's commercial zoning to commercial zoning, so we could not require a fence at that time.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So again,
that's in the area being circled now, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Please continue, Alder Johnson.
Thank you. So I think given Mr. Weed's comments that he could install some type of landscape barrier here, in the fact that by rezoning this, we can prevent cars from going all the way around. I actually do think it makes a more desirable situation, not only for the residents in that neighborhood, but for the property owner itself. I appreciate Mr. Neumeyer's responsibility to bring the facts forward to the commission, but I think it's also the commission's responsibility to take a look at this and say, what does our gut instinct tell us in terms of what creates a better situation for this particular neighborhood? And I think when I look at that, I think it does, like I said, create a better situation to approve this and let this go through the site plan process in terms of getting the landscaping. We can talk about the one-way directional usage at that time. And of course, we have to trust that Mr. Weed will honor those requests. He has indicated here on the phone, on the call today that he doesn't see why that wouldn't be. He doesn't see why that would be a problem. So for those reasons, I do support this change. I would encourage the commissioners to do the same.
I'm sorry. Any other comments from the commissioners, or do we have a motion?
So we would have to have a site plan going through the planning department. Is that correct?
That's correct. That'd be the next step, is a site plan would have to be submitted and it would have to meet code, yes. But it would not necessarily come back to the commission for your review.
Right, okay.
Commissioner Petrosky?
I would move to approve the request as it's put forward by the applicant.
Is there a second?
I'll...
Commissioner Hanson seconds it. Commissioner Petrosky moves to approve the request by the applicant, which is to set aside the recommendation of staff. Any other comments?
So just to be clear,
yes.
then, so the recommendation or the motion would be to the existing 10-foot strip, the length of the applicant's property, to rezone it from that single family residential to R2. I just want to check with Mr. Neumeyer to be in compliance. It's the same zoning for the rest of the parcel up to the property line.
Yep, to C2. So the balance of the property would go to C2.
Okay.
And is that the intention of Commissioner Petrosky and Commissioner Hanson? I'm getting a nod from Commissioner Hanson and Commissioner Petrosky. I will vote in favor of this. I'm doing so, I must say very clearly, Mr. Weed, on the basis of your expressed intention to go forward with the one that would circle around this small area and to provide significant planting for buffering. And I see Mr. Weed is nodding, indicating that he understands that. Any other comments before we vote? So we're all in favor of the motion to change the zoning here from, let's see. To rezone the 10-foot wide strip from low-density residential to highway commercial at 1828 South Ashland Avenue as submitted by Anthony Weed at Dino Stop LLC property owner. May I see hands of those who vote in, or I'll go down the list here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, of course. So Commissioner, I'm losing track of all my things here. Commissioner Alder Veronica Corp Stacks.
Aye.
You vote aye. Commissioner Hanson?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Nay.
Commissioner Petrosky?
Aye.
And I will vote aye as well. So it passes by a vote of 4-1. And again, this will come to the City Council next Tuesday. Is that my correct understanding? Yes, I'm getting a nod from staff. Thank you very much. And thank you for the concerns that you've raised about this. I hope we'll be able to get a good resolution. We now move to order of business number 5, which is a public hearing on the request to amend a conditional use permit to increase the occupancy for an existing shelter facility from 46 to 100 individuals located in an office residential district at 430 South Clay Street, submitted by Pastor Manuelis Reaco, Transformation House property owner. And again, Mr. Newmeyer, I would ask you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just give a brief overview. Again, this might seem somewhat familiar. This is the Transformation House. They have an existing shelter facility at 430 South Clay Street. It is the site of a former nursing home. They obtained the conditional use permit in 2018. Due to the COVID-19 and some of the stresses on shelter facilities throughout the community, the applicants kind of offered their facility to house home individuals on a temporary basis. So staff felt it was important for them to come back and amend their conditional use permit to allow an increased occupancy from 46, which was approved under the original conditional use permit, to 100. But with the stipulation that it would have to be under some sort of mandated natural emergency, basically, where they could do a temporary increase in their occupancy. So we would add some language that would allow it to occur only on a temporary basis based on some emergency declaration.
And as I recall, also not to exceed what is permissible by code.
Correct. So there would be other issues with the building. They would have to, seek assistance from an architect, receive the necessary permits to make sure the building itself was code compliant. This obviously would just deal with the zoning end of it to allow for that temporary use.
Thank you. This is a public hearing hosted with public notification published in the Green Bay Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject before we move to a regular order of business to discuss and potentially act on the issue. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or are only providing information in this matter. And we ask you to confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. I would now ask that the mics be unmuted so we might see we might hear if there is anybody who wishes to speak on this issue in favor of the proposal. And I see one.
Yes. Yep, I believe that is the applicant, Madam Chair.
Good.
Yep.
Okay, then I would recognize the applicant, please.
Hi, my name is Lisa Anderson Bureau. I don't know if I use my home address or the address for here. Which does it matter? Is the purposes of your meeting?
Your home address, please.
Okay. 2567 Kathy Drive in Green Bay, here in Green Bay.
And when you say your address here, are you in Transformation House?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm on site at Transformation House at 430 Clay. Thank you again for having us. I'm the assistant director here. Pastor Rico, the executive director and who made the request, is also present here. And what was stated is correct. We are proposing this as a response to the urgent community need to serve those who are on the street during this public health pandemic. This came out of some groups that we belong to, local shelter groups and things like that, and some community providers that asked us to step in because, quite frankly, we have the space and are able to meet the safer at home guidelines being set up like a nursing home than some of our existing shelters. And so we've worked really hard with those providers. They have funded things here to assist with that. And we are fully operational at this point in terms of what we understand there to be code-wise. We did have an additional shower head supplied and installed by by a licensed contractor. It's my understanding that inspection was also complete and appropriate. And so we continue to work daily with our city officials. I am on the phone daily with CDC, the health department, and our local outreach healthcare to ensure that we are following all of the up to the minute safe at home guidelines and health guidelines to serve the need of the public here. And so we would ask to continue to be able to do that. I know that's a big jump in numbers. We're certainly feeling that potential here financially. And so we're just day by day hoping to meet that need, and certainly hope we're not going to need to serve 100, but recognize that that's actually a possible real number. I'm encouraged to hear some of the other shelters are looking at being able to do safer intakes and things like that, which will lessen our burden and hopefully spread the work amongst several of us. But we just don't know at this point, as you all know. And so we would ask for this temporary order or temporary amendment to the CUP to be able to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. And does Pastor Echo wish to speak at this point, or after we raise this as a matter for discussion and action?
After you raise the matter.
Very good. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor of this proposal in the public? Yes, Alder Galvin.
Thank you. I've been in contact with Pastor Rico to ask him about this. I do have some questions I'd like to ask, I guess. I would have to say initially I'm in favor. I don't know if this is the point where I ask Lisa Anderson Bureau some questions or Pastor Rico some questions here. But there's more information I'd like to have, before I move forward. So let me know where you want me to jump in on this thing.
Thank you, Alder Galvin. We'll wait, I think, until we consider this with opening the floor for comments at that time, and be very welcoming to your concerns.
All right, thank you.
Is there anything you want to say, though, in general at this point?
I will say that there was a lot of trepidation on my part when Pastor Rico first opened this facility. I was very concerned. I met with him, and I liked what he had to say. But again, the proof is in the pudding. But I did a lot of research on his past locations, found out that a lot of people's fears were unfounded. And I would have to say, since he's been in place there, I have received, initially I received a few complaints, but after that I received no more complaints. The city is supposed to get a quarterly, I believe it's a quarterly review as listed in the CUP, and we've never received a report at all yet with anything that indicated any issues with that facility. So I commend what he's been doing. He's been true to his word on how he was going to operate it. And so that's just my comments right now.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor of this? Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposal? If you would signify by raising your hand, there's a raise your hand element on the Zoom. Or perhaps Director Vonk, you could unmute the mics so that we could hear anyone say they would like to speak.
Sure, I will not see any hands, but I'll take a moment and everyone will be unmuted. If anyone wishes to speak.
Please say so we can hear you.
I believe we have maybe a Miss Eileen who wishes to speak. So I'm going to just mute everyone and then turn her on. Okay. All right. We have Miss Eileen.
And if you could tell us your name and your address, first of all.
My name is Eileen Fry at 425 South Clay Street.
And is that Frye?
Correct.
Thank you. And do you represent any group or association?
No.
Okay, please continue and tell us what your concerns are.
Alderman Galvin has a letter from my husband that was written, and I assume that he will be reading that this evening.
I think you're requesting that he do so.
That would be my request.
Thank you. And what else would you care to ask
There are many.
or say?
Well, they're in the letter. It looks like he's not aware of this letter.
I think we need to ask Alder Galvin. Do you have in your possession the letter to which she refers?
I didn't know they wanted me to read it tonight. I'm trying to find it in my email queue here. So
that was the assumption that the letter would be read.
Well, I mean, I can read it, but do you want to read it since it's your husband's letter? Or
I have not the letter.
I take it you don't have a copy of the letter, Ms. Fry, right?
All right. Well, just give me a minute to find it, and I'll get right back to you. Great.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition? And we can come back to that. And I see SIW 14. Please identify. Thank you. Identify yourself and tell us what your address is.
My name is Larry Fry, and my address is 425 South Clay Street.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the letter, I had one question, and that was concerning an increase of residents will result in a deviation from the current mission of Transformation House from alcohol and drug counseling to more of that of a homeless shelter. And when we were discussing the original CUP permit, it was stated over and over again that it was not a homeless shelter, that it was a counseling center. And I was just wondering how this deviation or this CUP amendment would affect that mission.
And I assume that it would be a loss if there was an effect.
I would say that it would be a change from what is going on at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I will make sure that question is addressed when we move to discussion and possible action.
Thank you.
Is there anything else to be raised at this point in the public hearing in opposition to the proposal? Again, why don't you open the mics there, Director Vonk?
Hi, this is Mary Schrader.
Yes, right. Thank you, Mary Schrader. Please, your address.
My address is 409 South Webster, right next door to the Transformation House.
Okay.
But I'm also representing, I guess, a group. Well, I am the apartment manager of the Regency East Apartments, which is right next door.
Yes.
So we went to many of these meetings, and I agree with Larry Fry there that it is now, I guess, becoming a homeless shelter. The one thing that we didn't want it to be. There's a lot of other issues when you double the capacity of that place. I know they're going to be, quarantined, I guess. But what happens after that, as far as parking, walking, more people, more traffic? They're doubling the capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's my concern.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if we could open the mics one more time to see if there's anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition.
They are open.
This is William Hart.
Okay, we have a William.
William, and what is your last name?
JRT.
And your address?
I reside at 92 Cambridge Road, Madison, Wisconsin. I'm the owner of Regency East Apartments. Mary Schrader is my manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to weigh in that we continue to have concerns about inadequate parking. We support the noble mission. God bless. I wish everyone has a warm bed and a roof over their heads. However, It's misrepresented by the amount of parking they have. It's put undue pressure on our facility to provide parking for our tenants. I mean, we've met the zoning requirements to provide the adequate parking, and our property has been encroached on without our permission. And it's a fine and noble idea, but and God bless. However, it does affect our right of use of our property. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you for sharing your concern. Okay. Again, if we could open the mics, I see Alder Galvin has something to say at this point.
Yes, I have found the letter for that
Thank
Mr. Fry sent me. I guess my concern is I'd like Mr. Fry to explain to me why he wants me to read this letter, madam.
Mr. Fry, your mic is open.
As I understood it, the comments that we had were going to be expressed to the committee. I wasn't sure that we were going to be allowed to participate via the Zoom. So that's why I sent the letter to Alderman Galvin.
All right, then if I have the indulgence of the committee, I'll read this letter.
By all means, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Fry.
And then I would ask if Lisa Anderson Bureau would maybe take note of some of the points here, questions, and then we can get some answers to those when it's your turn to have at it. Okay, so this is dated May 4th, 2020, Alderman Galvin. I would like to express some concerns about the request of Manuel Rico to the occupancy of transformation current level of 46 to 100 individuals. Over the last year, Transformation House have been rather quiet neighbors. However, I do not believe that the proposed increase is feasible. When the facility was a nursing home, the capacity of the facility almost never exceeded 55 individuals. Residents would certainly be doubling up in rooms that were not designed for that purpose. I am also not willing to accept more than double the capacity without a significant increase in staff. It is important to me that all residents of the facility continue to be screened, vetted, and closely supervised for the safety of the neighborhood. Increasing occupancy will also increase residential neighborhood traffic and demands for more parking. I'm also concerned about the increase of the amount of trash that an increase of residents would bring. The trash is currently collected in an open trailer and hauled periodically to the dump. We have noticed an increase in windblown trash in the street and yards and suspect that more than doubling the number of residents would make the situation worse. With the current COVID-19 virus cases continuing to increase in our community, I fear that the facility could easily become a hotspot. I hope that the county health department will be consulted about the safe density of the building. I have witnessed inconsistent social distancing and use of masks. The letter we received was also unclear as to the duration of this temporary use permit. If the current state of emergency is the reason for this request, will this permit be revoked when the state of emergency ends? And who determines when the temporary conditional use permit expires? Will this temporary increase be used as a precedent to increase the occupancy permanently? One of the initial concerns that we had about Transformation House was that because of the nature of conditional use permits that gives neighbors no binding voice in the process, the facility would be allowed to continue to grow beyond the limits of the original conditional use permit. My wife and I have tried to be tolerant neighbors, accepting the changes that Transformation House has brought to the neighborhood. We realize that our voices carry no weight in the decision-making of the Plan Commission, but we hope that the Commission will consider our concerns. Larry and Eileen Fry, 425 South Clay Street, Green Bay.
Thank you, Alder Galvin. And thank you, Eileen Fry and Larry Fry, for asking for that reading. If we could have the mics again open one more time. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition? Is there anyone who wishes to speak simply to provide information? And I would ask two more times to meet the legal requirements. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Having heard no such response, then I would ask a commissioner for a motion to return to regular order of business. No, thank you. Lisa has this wonderful, look on her face. Okay, having heard no other people wishing to speak at this public hearing, I declare it closed, and we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is to consider with possible action the request to amend the CUP to increase the occupancy for the existing shelter at 430 South Clay Street from 46 to 100 individuals. Submitted by Pastor Manuelis Rico, Transformation House property owner. And at this point, I would ask Paul if you have anything further that you need to add to the staff report.
I have nothing further to add except that staff is recommending approval of the request, subject to the condition being added to the CUP.
And as I understand it, there are two important points that have been hit on in the public hearing, that this is only for the duration of the official emergency period, emergency declaration, either by local, state, or federal, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And it would end at such point as all those declarations ended. And then secondly, that the facility would need to pass all code requirements for, is it a dormitory situation? I can't remember the classification.
Yes, from a zoning and building code perspective, yes. So they would have to obtain necessary building permit approval to reach that ultimate occupancy, yes.
Okay, thank you. Having said that, what questions do any of the commissioners have to ask Dr. Neumeyer before we consider opening the floor again?
I think I will just add one thing. This has been an ongoing conversation. The city has been involved, obviously, since the outbreak. Talking with providers in our community who offer services to homeless individuals. In our discussions with the county, who is the designated public health officer for the city of Green Bay, we fall under their jurisdiction. They do have a concern about our homeless population and how they operate in terms of directives to shelter in place. And so the county reached out to, initially to a lot of these providers saying, look, do you have extra capacity? One of the things that, from a zoning and building code perspective is that, yes, we want to be able to shelter individuals, but they need to be sheltered in a place that's safe for human habitation and a place that's safe to sleep overnight. So we've discussed a few structures that did not pass that test. And then we've worked on others, and there may be some others forthcoming. And working with Transformation House, going back through the original building report that was conducted by an architect. What was limiting them initially were plumbing fixtures and just the ability to hold a certain number of people. And so the CUP was capped at 46, right? That's what the building code says you can have safe for a dormitory. With certain changes to the building, and then primarily these were, I believe, plumbing driven in terms of the availability of fixtures to house people, that capacity could go up to 100. But just it is, Mr. Neumeyer had said, and then really just in clarification, the reason that we're doing this is to handle an emergency situation. So there has to be an emergency declaration, and there has to be the consent of either myself, Mr. Neumeyer, or Paul Van Kelster, our chief building official, to make sure that the building is still safe in order to hold people. And so just in terms of the temporary nature, right? I think all of us wish this was over yesterday, but this is designed to be used as a truly emergency purpose. And I think it's very clear that there's no intent to have this carry on, beyond that state of emergency.
And as I'm understanding it, then you're saying the purpose is as an emergency shelter.
That is correct. And we've reached out, and again, us and the county, to everyone who is providing services to the homeless to find additional places for shelter. Look, I mean, it's no secret the number of homeless individuals in the city has been growing. And over the winter, we saw increased counts. And again, as some shelters change out of winter operations into summer operations, there are other individuals who need shelter. And so again, we're looking for these emergency shelter places.
Thank you. Any other questions to staff or any other comments from the staff? Commissioner Hanson?
I guess I'm just curious as far as the emergency declaration. What emergency declaration are they following? Are you talking about something that for the state of Wisconsin that we're closed until the 24th of this month? Or is it something that we're thinking is further into the future?
So I tend to defer, right, all things local. And right now our mayor, and confirmed by the city council, has declared a state of emergency based in, I guess, consultation or consideration with federal guidelines and state orders that are out there. But ultimately it is, I would look at deferring to the local. I think the reason this language was in there was also to, God forbid, in a few years we would have a severe natural disaster, flooding, tornado, or something, where for a period of time, perhaps, we may need to open emergency shelters, that this would be designed to handle those situations. So while it says, federal, state, or local, I would look at the local one being the most binding, because that is the one really done by our local elected officials in terms of really understanding the true need of the emergency in our community.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? And again, Alder Galvin, you asked me to let you know when it was a good time to speak up. This is not for questions to the proponents, but do you have any questions you wish to ask the staff?
Sure. Let me see. Who is, Dr. Vonk, who approached you first about this?
Who approached us?
Yes.
So this was some conversations between myself, Assistant Director Renyer Wig, the county health officials, Ms. Anna Destry, Mr. Eric Pritzel. Initially, our conversations actually started around St. John's, and looking at their notion that they were going to be shifting from, or they did now shift from winter operations to summer operations, where they still have just an emergency shelter there to house people just in the gymnasium overnight. We talked about them about the same exact thing about maybe continuing their winter operations. They were not interested in doing that, and they're actually exploring some other alternatives, not within the city of Green Bay. And so it was during those conversations, and I believe it was a county who came to us and said there may be a possibility at Transformation House. They have capacity to house individuals. I do not know from that conversation whether it was Transformation that contacted the county or the county contacting Transformation House, but it was the county actually coming to us asking about this request. And then when we discussed it, we said, all right, we can pursue that in terms of looking at that as an option. But I mean, there is a conditional use permit governing it, and we want to make sure that we have that in place so that we're clear in terms of what the expectations are for providing shelter.
Okay. Was any thought given to the dorms at Uwgb, St. Norbert's College, the Priory, it's the Abbey?
Sure. So yes. So there's been a lot of consideration. There's a few layers of trying to provide services. One is just to provide, what we'll call emergency shelter, a place to sleep at night. I think one of the things is this Transformation House is not designed to be a place to shelter individuals with COVID-19. The county has facilities, and I believe they've looked at some hotels, and again, they're not disclosing those just out of patient safety, whether you're homeless or sheltered or just regardless of I guess, housing status, those isolation areas are meant for individuals with COVID-19. That is not what Transformation House or St. John's is meant for. Those are to continue to operate as quote unquote, traditional or emergency shelters. So I know the county has also made contact with some hotels and also the university. I do not believe, I've not been privy to this conversation, but they were not in a place to be able to provide that shelter. I know I've also been working with NewCap to provide some funding to also provide some hotel vouchers. We've been able to work successfully with a few hotels in the area to provide at a discounted rate some shelter at their facilities as well. So that has been another option. But really, we're struggling in terms of where those can be. But then also, we're also looking at places where, individuals who may still be working can have access to transit or access to the other social services or mental health services that they may need. And a number of those are in and around downtown Green Bay.
Okay. The cost for this, is this going to be totally, is the city or the county going to put any money into this, or is this totally going to be Transformation House that's picking up the tab for everything that has to be done? I mean, we're talking staff, food, trash. I mean, all this is going to cost extra money.
Sure. So I don't want to get too far out of the scope of tonight's discussion in terms of the zoning piece. I think some of this may actually be talked about tomorrow at Redevelopment Authority and then Council the following week. The city is looking at potentially allocating some of its block grant funding to some homelessness initiatives. What our intent would be to do, we have some specific projects that we're looking at. In general, some of the funds that are going into NewCap, which then provides the services or I guess funnels the funds to the providers. The city is not intending at this time of providing any money directly to Transformation House. Rather than we're going to look at potentially doing it to providers who then provide services to help with the homeless population in our community. But no funding is being considered for Transformation House, and specifically no funding is being considered, as part of this request at all.
Okay. All right. And getting down to the nuts and bolts of the transformation facility itself. Currently, they've got up to 46 individuals can be living there. If we go up to 100, does that mean that there will be more than one individual per room? And when I toured the place, those rooms, by today's standards, were very small, big enough for a bed and maybe a dresser. And that was it. Are we going to be bunk bedding people in there? I mean, is that acceptable by the current CUP, or are we going to have to change things like that? Parking. There's a lot of concern about parking at the time, and I think everyone realizes a lot of homeless people don't own cars. So I don't know if that's really been an issue. Someone alluded to it, but I've heard of no complaints by the people that were claiming that their parking was being impinged on. Trash, to me, if they're hauling the trash out themselves or contracting with someone, again, that's doesn't seem like a huge issue to me. But the staffing, I don't think the current CUP has a ratio on staffing or anything else like that. And then the city's date for the emergency to end. I'm trying to remember when it was. Was it May 26th for the city?
It was a council action. I think I know it keeps getting pushed out, right? Probably, I think, till a day past the next council meeting. So I think the next one is till May 20th. What the thought is that council will take action on it on May 19th, deciding if they're going to keep with the safer at home or change it on that. But I believe right now the cities goes through the 20th.
Okay, so
and I see Alder Corpus Dax agreeing with that.
Okay, and I think you're right, Kevin. I guess I'm wondering, and I don't know if it just took too long for this whole thing to get going, but if council ends it on the 20th, I mean, I kind of wonder what we're doing here, except for maybe spinning our wheels.
Sure. So a few things. One, we, as soon as we heard about this, we asked them to submit the request to get this in the queue.
Okay.
Regardless of the time it takes for our political process, I think it's just important that we, are straightforward and upfront with what we're doing. We did have a technical glitch in terms of our Zoom meeting scheduling and public notices, that we got our Planning Commission meeting canceled on April 26th. So that did push it back by 2 weeks in terms of what we were doing. There's another larger piece to this, that in terms of when we do have a public health emergency, I mean, the public health officer does have some ability to flex his or her muscles in terms of ordering things in the name of public health and safety. And so I think, there could be an instance where, I don't want to say confrontational, but look, if issues were serious and the public health officer felt it was in his or her best interest to shelter individuals, they could look at other alternatives or other options. I think from a city perspective, we've been glad that we're at least having a cooperative conversation and saying, look, we want to shelter individuals as well, but let's make sure a primary concern is from a building code perspective that we're not putting them into basements. We're not putting them into buildings that weren't designed for human habitation. And I think what we have here, is it's a former residential facility. So, with some modifications, that again will have to be reviewed by our chief building official, really in terms of just safety, ingress, egress,
Sure.
there's enough space in there per individual that for us is the primary driving concern is, let's not just provide a place of shelter, but we need to do our due diligence and provide a place of shelter that fits, health and human safety criteria. So I think just because of the unknown of how long this may go on, I think we also wanted to have it on, even if, like, let's say council stops this on the 20th, something fires back up in the summer, or something fires back up in the fall. I don't want to start the process then. I want to be prepared. I mean, I hate saying it, and foreshadowing that way, but I think this is good for any type of shelter. And it's something we'll probably look at in the future if we do any other conditional use permits of just what's the potential for their use during an emergency or a state of emergency. And so regardless of this particular one, I think this is just a good thing to do. So we're all clear, and this could be potentially used either now and or the future.
And again, for a state of emergency, which might be local or federal or state.
Correct.
Well, I think
even though the motive has been the local one here.
Right. And I think the CUP should address that. I mean, there's been a lot of concern about the state of emergency declared about by the state of Wisconsin. There's been some concern about the one declared by the federal government, and then also the one declared by the city. But I think the CUP should address that, because I have a concern that in the future, and again, we always have to think long bow shot. We can't think what's happening right now, but 5 years, 10 years from now, say something happened and someone starts declaring a state of emergency, and someone grabs onto that and goes, well, there's a state of emergency, so we're going to do A, B, and C as it relates to an Act CUP. And so I think the CUP needs specifically, if it's the city of Green Bay or the state or federal government or what, and what that emergency should be. If it's any emergency, I mean, we have how many states of emergencies with flooding along the East River? Is that a good reason to open it up for a shelter, even though that flooding may not be affecting our homeless population at all or not? So, I mean, those are some of the concerns I have. Well, last question though, Kevin, has the city identified everything that needs to be updated, changed, fixed, or implemented at this facility for them to take on 100 individuals? And has that been given to the facility to start working on?
So they are in the process of it now. With the original CUP for this building, I believe Planning Commission and Council was provided with a report that was done by Performa. We had a licensed architect go through and basically said, taking the building as is, here's the safe maximum capacity with A, B, and C changes. Here's the potential increased capacity. So they have been in contact and working with our building inspectors on achieving those pieces in terms of, I think, again, a driving or limiting factor had to do with plumbing fixtures, the number of bathroom and shower facilities available to be, classified, that per capita dormitory regulations. I still have to look at the Eclipse records to see where they're at, but they're in the process of updating to be able to get that expanded capacity. With that, just the report said, and in no cases did I see any indication that it could go over 100. I think that was the max based on the building itself without doing any, substantial like additional renovation by adding actual additional space in there. So based on that space and improving some plumbing fixtures, improving some of those, you could get up to 100, but that would be the limiting factor now.
All right, thank you. I think that's pretty much answers all my questions for now. I realize some other comments I made, you're right, Kevin, do need to be addressed more at the RDA. But I think if I do have some other questions, but I'm going to save that for Pastor Rico and Miss Anderson Bureau.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Elder Galvin. I want to follow up in two regards, and again to Director Vonk, just to make sure. My understanding is that the current proposal includes local, state, and federal states of emergency that would include our city. Is that correct?
Yes, and if that's something that, as Elder Galvin had stated, if you would like to tighten up or make more specific, right? I mean, you can't predict everything, and so we're trying to have this balance of being broad enough to look at future pandemics or other disasters, but not being narrow enough to, miss something or, have something that individuals could take advantage of. So if there's some things that you'd like us to discuss in terms of how to tweak that language, I think that's something that we could do here tonight, or would be the commission's pleasure to modify to get that intent more clarified.
Okay. And then the other thing is, my understanding again is that although the consultations you've had so far indicate it might be modified to accommodate safely 100 residents, the permission would only kick in to the extent that the modifications were made for whatever number of residents those modifications allowed. Is that correct?
Correct. And I think
so we're not presuming it's going to be 100.
Correct. And I think that's why we also have kind of the three parties in there, because I really feel, and if you want to change that to an and, really governing this, the duties that we have or have taken an oath to do, upholding health, safety, and welfare, especially for our chief building official, they are not going to allow an occupancy to, exceed what that building can safely hold.
Right.
So the chief building official, the building inspector, will ultimately make that determination of what that max capacity is.
And if we were to,
that another registered architect has looked at this, but ultimately, that chief building official is going to say, and look, they consult also with the fire marshal. And then again, we've gone through some properties that they need to be assured that, yes, this is a safe place to put individuals, and this is the safe capacity that we can have.
And the proposal that we have before us is simply to make it possible for that to happen.
Correct. This changes no other aspects of the PUD that are in place. And I think one of the things that was in there in terms of, I think there's some pretty liberal provisions for myself, zoning administrator, plan commission, or council to pull this CUP for review if there are issues. To his credit, Mr. Rico has really run a pretty tight ship in terms of our department has not received complaints on it. But in terms of all the other conditions on there, the emergency declaration really just adds the capacity aspect. It does not change any other aspects of the PUD in terms of compliance that they need to adhere by.
Thank you. And excuse me if I'm being tedious, but a number of issues that were raised in the public hearing lead me to make sure that I'm understanding what's being proposed. Any other members of the commission with questions for the staff at this stage? then I know we want to hear from Pastor Rico and any other people who wish to speak. So may we have a motion to open the floor? Commissioner Hanson?
So motioned.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Commissioner Petrowski? All those in favor, please follow the roll here. Commissioner Hanson is in favor, right? Yes. Commissioner Alder Corpus Dax.
Madam, you could just do a raise of hands for opening the floor.
Okay, go for it. Hands up for opening the floor. Yes, we've got a unanimous, and the floor is now open. And I wonder who would wish to speak at this time.
I guess if the applicant maybe could answer some of the questions that have been brought up so far, I will go to him first.
I would like, as chair, however, to reserve the possibility of asking him to speak again if later questions come up.
Okay, sure.
If we could ask Pastor Rico to address the commission. And you've heard a fair number of questions. We'll be eager to hear what you have to say.
If I can just ask, given I'm the one that has been involved in all of these meetings that address many of the questions, are you wanting to hear from Pastor Rico, or am I able to answer those questions on his behalf? Or
why don't we do that first? Okay, Ms. Anderson, why don't you speak first then?
Again, we really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and certainly our community around us is important. And so we have listened to really what the primary concerns are, and many of them are not different from what we've heard at any point in our process in being here. And so I just literally numbered them down in wanting to make sure that I addressed everybody. And so I'm just going to go that route. The comments by Mr. and Mrs. Fry regarding a homeless shelter versus a counseling center, I very much appreciate that. And yes, if you look at our mission, there is some slight deviation from there. However, I would argue that because notwithstanding this request and the need that we are attempting to meet, our standard here remains. So our screening process remains. The rules and expectations of our residents remain, whether they are in our emergency shelter portion or in our transitional living program. They are all expected to abide by those transitional living program guidelines within the Safer at Home guideline. And so that would really be my comment regarding that. We're not opened up to residents having alcohol on site, any of those things. Every single individual here continues to breathalyze every single day, even though many of them are quarantined and on site, don't leave. We still are requiring that of every individual here. And so that has remained important to us to maintain the integrity of the program in that regard. Regarding Ms. Schroeder's comments, that this is now a homeless shelter and not what you wanted it to be. I can appreciate that as we're given the work that we do here. I'm always disheartened to hear that, because our homeless individuals are just that. They're individuals just like you and I believe strongly part of our mission here is that everyone, no matter what, should have access to safe housing, housing and a place to sleep and food in their belly. And so it's difficult for me to hear that, but I can appreciate what sort of the stigma of that looks like. I don't have much to say regarding that comment other than that. Regarding you guys have had to accommodate our residents that we aren't hearing about. And certainly my office is right next to your parking lot, looking over your parking lot. And I know in error, a few of our new people have come in and parked there. And I've gone so far as to putting notes on the car. You can't park here. You need to come see me so that we can make other arrangements. Another comment, I think it was already brought up by one of the members, is accurately, only about 10% of our residents have vehicles. And so parking really hasn't been an issue for us, other than it being a public concern, which we're cognizant of. We also don't want, for the public and for the visibility of our program, to have 15 cars lined up down the street, then they're moving them because of the parking utility guidelines. And so we work with our residents. If that means we've got to get them a parking spot off site while they're quarantining to meet those needs. And again, I have a resident parking lot right now that maybe has 4 cars in it. And so that we are aware of that concern, but really haven't seen the issue there. Regarding the nursing home, only at the time, only being able to accommodate 55, and does that mean doubled up rooms and we're going to be louder and those concerns? Again, I would just go back to Pastor Rico and myself, and really our staff as a whole have worked very, very hard to maintain the integrity of this program. We recognize how difficult it was to be in this place, given the opposition. And sort of, as somebody mentioned, the proof is in the pudding. I think that we have operated well above what the expectation was here, and that remains important to us. And quite frankly, our residents take that very seriously as well. You're always going to have a few, and we deal with those swiftly, but they have pride in ownership, and I spend day in and day out telling them this is your home. And so I want them to feel like that. And in that comes the pride where they're taking care of garbage they pick up. They're taking care of the property, and this is home to them. And so it's again, that stigma that comes along with it. But they're also human and individuals, and they act accordingly in our facility without having to be directed to, quite frankly. Our staff, there's some issues or concerns I hear regarding staffing up. We are very well aware of those issues as well. We have already added additional security staff, whereas we weren't having real heavily staffed at that lower, recognizing just the increased need in the 46 that we do have, with what comes along with having to isolate and everybody worried and being, kept from families, and all of the things that have gone along for us here in this pandemic has required more time and attention, more staff. And so we've already staffed up, and we will continue to do so to ensure that, primarily from our concern, and I don't mean this in any disregard for the community, but it's important to me that the guys have that. And so while we look at a community perspective, my job when I come in here every day, Pastor Rico's job, is to make sure that the men that we serve in this program are of most priority. And if that means we need additional staff to keep everybody safe and checked in on and all of that, we have done that and done that, notwithstanding increasing our number at this point. Regarding the trash, I certainly, as a homeowner, don't want to see that happening either. We're happy to place extra eyes on that. I have more than enough guys here that are continually asking, what can we do? They're bored, they're quarantined. If they want to go pick up trash, they're more than welcome to. They've been working on a little bit of a garden on our patio. And so their pride in this is just as important to them. Regarding the COVID hotspot issue, we couldn't be more up to speed with what these daily guidelines are. And frustratingly so for all of us, those change daily. And so part of my day-to-day routine is I'm involved on several Zoom calls with other shelter providers, our outreach healthcare, the health department. Eric Pritzel's been involved in some of them, the Homeless and Housing Coalition, and we all meet daily to address what are the concerns, what are the needs, how do we keep all of our residents safe, and we take all of those guidelines back to everybody. If it means we have to change things every day, which was about how it was happening for the first couple weeks, we have done that. In fact, we were operating to keep everyone safe well ahead of what the CDC guideline was before it was happening in terms of masking and things like that. My other comments on the hotspot, we, again, though I can't comment where, we've worked very closely with the county quarantine sites coordinator. And if and when there's an individual that had a potential contact, whether here or work or out in the community, we have had them removed off site into those facilities because that's what we're designed for, or they're designed for. And again, we weren't looking to be the quarantine site, rather as a preventative measure, removing them from site, but still providing service to them off site in terms of case management and things like that. So we, that's how we've addressed that need. And those that you're talking about in isolation here and things like that, do we have some of that going on? Yes. The reason being is sometimes we don't know where an individual is coming from. So it's purely from a preventative nature, not because we are accepting people into the facility with a positive test. And quite frankly, at this point in the game, we have now started requiring that they're tested since it's so readily available, which wasn't the case not too long ago, that they get tested. And in that duration, we're not going to put you on the street. We're going to quarantine you to this room. Everything happens in this room for you until we have that result. And then if positive, you'll be going to quarantine, taken widely into consideration. And that's how we've been operating. I just wanted to just briefly comment because I relationship building is a big part of what we do. And having done this work for quite some time and meeting a lot of that resistance, there was a comment made, I believe, by Mr. Fry that you recognize that your input doesn't matter and you have no weight when it comes to this. And I understand that in terms of this political process, but please, again, as we have always said, I want to hear what those concerns are because more eyes are better than one. And sometimes I just don't see it. And sometimes Pastor just doesn't see it. And so sometimes we're boots on the ground, just meeting those immediate needs and don't always see those things going on. And so door is always open and welcome. And whether you feel you have a voice or not, we are committed to and will remain committed to providing a space for you to have that voice so that we can continue to keep this area of the community operating as best we can. And then just my final comment on Commissioner Hansen kind of talking about different site locations and things like that. And yes, having worked with this population for several years now, most of what their day-to-day needs are located here downtown Green Bay. And so to remove that opportunity and without transportation, have people shifted off to all of these faraway areas really is a detriment to the individual in terms of getting services that are vital in their day-to-day, whether it's maintaining their mental health, maintaining sobriety with supports that they have in the community, connects that we make through case management and things like that. So, I struggle to hear that people don't want that down here, but this is where those services are provided. And so we are just trying to be the most helpful and conscientious piece of that puzzle that we can be during this period of time. And we certainly do recognize that this is only for that public emergency. So I assure you, our intent isn't to shift to operating as a last resort emergency shelter for the next 5 years. We're just trying to meet that need right now, recognizing the opportunity that we have here with the space that we have and abilities that our staff have, and then resuming back to our transitional living program as previously scheduled programming. So that I think hopefully I've addressed everything at least that I caught in notes. And if I didn't, I apologize. That's all I got.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anderson. Pastor Rico, do you wish to say anything at this point?
Well, I think Sister Anderson said a whole lot.
Yes, she did.
So at this time, no, we're just trying to do our part. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
How to proceed here? We need to hear from other people who wish to speak. And I think the best way to do that, Director Vonk, is to open the mics so we can find out who those people might be.
All right. I think maybe Alder Galvin wants to speak, and then we can go to the audience. So I'll put Alder Galvin on.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. And I would have to say that Mrs. Anderson-Bureau, you pretty much answered all my questions. I just want to make a few comments and then I'll be quiet. I think you run a great facility. I think you serve a segment of our society that a lot of people don't want to have to deal with, and I think you do a very good job doing it. I've been in contact with Pat Murphy of Murphy Development. He is the person that created the Brown County Crime Prevention Association. I was part of that board for a long time. I told him about your facility. He's been out to see you. He's been involved with you. He speaks very highly, and he is impressed with the program that you folks run. I know there was a lot of concern by the residents at first, and I certainly was one of them. But you folks have done everything that we've asked and above that. You installed the security cameras, you have security people. The people that stay with you are paying rent or attempting to pay rent. They're required to work or be seeking active work. They're required to go to counseling sessions for mental health and other issues that they may be facing that may have led to them being homeless. You do a lot for our community, and you take a lot of these individuals and have helped them to help themselves become productive members of our community again. And I don't believe that, let's face it, there's different types of homeless. There's people that are, all of them are homeless. That's the one thing that puts them in one group. But there's also many of them that want to get back on their feet and they want to have a life again. My own daughter was one of those individuals. And she was helped a lot by organizations within our county. A lot of the people at St. John's are people that have a lot of mental health issues and drug or alcohol issues. And those people, for the most part, if they're willing to follow the rules, can stay at Transformation House. But if they don't follow the rules, they won't be allowed there. And I think the neighbors need to understand that the Transformation House will do everything they can and have been doing everything they can to keep our neighborhoods safe. If anyone has any problems at all, I would recommend you reach out to the Transformation House and they will work with you. If there's trash, parking, whatever the issue may be, I believe that if you reach out to them, they'll help you. And if they don't, then reach out to me or reach out to the Green Bay Police Department. I've been in contact with the community police officers for this area, and they've had absolutely no complaints. I mean, they have been out there, but they don't have any complaints about how the facility is being run. And if they did, they're not telling anybody. And when I ask them, they tell me there's no issues. Granted, there's police calls. There's police calls everywhere. There's police calls in my neighborhood. That happens. It's what happens after the police are called or after the authorities get involved that determines if we have a problem or not. And my feelings is that the Transformation House does everything they can to mitigate those issues. So I'm in favor of this going ahead, just so that there's language in the cup in that addresses an emergency situation and how it applies to the Transformation House. And I'll save any other comments I have about funding and that for the RDA. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Galvin. Anybody else who wishes to speak? If we could open the mics. I see Ms. Fry.
Yes.
Your hand is raised and your mic has been opened. Please.
Thank you. The only reason you might not have heard any complaints is that Mr. Rako called the police on me for trying to communicate with him.
Would you care to give us any more specifics about that situation?
He literally called the police on me because he said I was calling him too often.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We appreciate you mentioning that, and perhaps Pastor Rico will want to speak to that in a moment. I did reserve the possibility of calling on him again. Is there anything else you wish to say?
No.
Thank you so much for coming. Anybody else? And we've got the mics.
Unmute. So everyone is unmuted.
Mary Schrader.
Okay, hold on 1 second. All right, Mary Schrader is unmuted.
Okay, Ms. Schroeder.
Hi. The only thing I wanted to say now, I guess at this point, because it sounds like this is going to be probably going through, is couldn't we set some sort of time limit on this? You know, saying when the emergency is over. I don't know. I think that's too broad. You know, when will it stop keeping 100 people and go back to the 46?
Thank you. That again goes to the scope of the state of emergency issue that I think we probably need to address in some way. Anybody else who wishes to speak?
Everyone is unmuted. If anyone else wishes to speak.
Okay. May we have a motion to close the floor and return to regular order of business?
Motion to close the floor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Hanson.
Second.
Or was that Alder Corpus Dax? I'm having the same problem other people do. Thank you, Veronica. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. All those in favor, please raise your hands. None opposed. We return to regular order of business, and I'm eager to hear from the commissioners now. Yes, Commissioner Petrowski.
A brief comment, because I think we spent a lot of time on this already, and then a motion. I think that the work that's being done there is tremendous. I'm not going to repeat everything that's been said. I think at a time like this, where we have people really, really feeling the pinch, both financially, as well as the fear of this virus, we don't need to compound that with having people be afraid that they don't have a safe place to sleep at night. So I will move to approve the proposal as it's been presented to us, with one grammatical change consistent with what you talked about, Madam Vice Chairwoman, that we add the sentence to follow the language about state, local, or federal state of emergency, with a caveat that encompasses the city of Green Bay. Just so it's perfectly clear and there's no, question about whether or not it has to be a state of emergency that applies to our local city. So I would say after "or local government," add the language impacting. Yes, that's perfect. And I would move for approval with that change.
And may I ask if you would accept as a friendly amendment to specify that has been declared as by the federal, state, or local government, and only for the duration of that state of emergency?
Yes.
So the intention is clear that this expansion would last only as long as the state of emergency lasted. Okay, is anybody else who wishes to speak at this point from the commission? We need a second for Commissioner Petrowski's motion.
A second.
Alder Corpus Dax seconds it with the additions and that friendly clarification that it lasts only for the duration. Okay. I think Director Vonk, you were kind enough to get in that wording right away. The city of Green Bay has been declared, I think that may be the point at which we might also add, and only as long, and for the length of its effect.
I believe that language was added at the very end.
Ah, great. That's fine. We don't have to be eloquent. We just have to be clear.
we may clean it up before it goes to council. But I think that's the intent, is that it specifies impacting the city, and it specifies only for the durations. So there's better wordsmiths in our department, but I believe that's the intent of this commission here.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? I do want to acknowledge my strong support for the original mission of Transition House, and my appreciation, as Ms. Anderson was speaking, that it's quite clear that although the rules of Transition House would apply to any people living there, that there is programming still for the primary people, as well as safe shelter for others. And I see her nodding that I have understood her correctly, so that the concern to serve the AODA population, for instance, is not lost in this. It's simply being shared, being kind of coterminous with other people who might need shelter. Anything else? Then I think it's time for a vote, and I will call the roll here. Vice Chair Alder Corpus Dax. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me repeat the language here so that I get this straight. And I'm having a little trouble managing all the stuff in front of me. Perhaps, recommendation. So we're voting to approve the request subject to the following additional condition: during the time at which an official state of emergency impacts the city of Green Bay and has been declared by the federal, state, or local government, and only for the duration of such emergency, the number of occupants and hours of operation may be increased to the maximum level permitted within this CUP with the consent, I believe that is, of the Director of Community and Economic Development, the administrator, or chief building official. All those in favor, as I read the roll: Alder Corpus Dax. Aye. Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Petruski.
Aye.
And I will vote in favor as well. I do want to express our appreciation for all those members of the public that shared their concerns and helped to strengthen this proposal, and very much our appreciation to the leaders of Transition House for this contribution to our community's response to emergencies. And then we can go on to the seventh item on our agenda, which is the public hearing on the request to amend zoning ordinance 1-19, Whitney Park Townhomes, to expand the plan unit development, that is the PUD, at the 200 block north of Van Buren Street, submitted by GB Real Estate Investments, LLC, property owner. And again, I believe that we get to turn to David Buck here to introduce this item.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Okay, this one's going to be very familiar to you guys as well. So this is on the corner of Cherry and North Van Buren, about 2 blocks south of Main Street on the east side, near downtown east side of Green Bay. The PUD petitioner is requesting a planned unit development be expanded to be able to expand the number of units on the site. So in 2018, these parcels were placed into a planned unit development to allow 4 or I should say 4 semi-detached single-family homes, townhouses basically, on the southern part of the site. Oh, and actually, there they are. So that's what they look like. If you want to go up one, Kevin, there you go. So, well, okay, this is the this is the comprehensive plan. It recommends high-intensity retail office or housing for generally the whole area. You want to go to the next one, is the zoning. The zoning is consistent with that. It's office residential. Over this site itself, except for the small little piece, the 10-72C, that is all currently included in a plan development. Petitioner is asking to add that 1.044 acre parcel to the plan development, which, if you go to the next slide, would allow him to be able to split. On the left is a certified survey map. It would be able to split 2 more lots, lot 5 and 6. And then you can see on the right side would allow the development of 2 additional townhomes or single family attached and extend the parking lot. So the original zoning ordinance, which was approved in 2018, was amended in 2019 for some setback issues, but that ordinance would still be in place for this entire site, expanded site. The one exception is the northern setback. So if you look on the right-hand side picture, the OR district would typically require an 8-foot side yard setback, interior side yard setback. In this case, because of the tightness of the sites, petitioner can't get an 8-foot setback on this lot itself, on lot 6. So what they're proposing is a 3-foot setback and providing a no-build easement on the property to the north, which they do control, or they do have, they don't necessarily control it, but they have the ability to get the easement. So we looked at that. The 10-foot is typically a building code issue. It is because of fire separation. However, our chief building official said there's other options out there, depending if you want to build the building differently or something that happens on the northern site. So we redrafted the plan unit development to add this extra parcel and then to provide a northern side yard setback of 8 feet, but that it may be reduced to no less than 3 feet if all requirements of the building code are satisfied. And then we added including but not limited to the no build easement that was proposed. These 2 additional townhouses would match the existing ones that are there, and that was kind of the next picture that you already got to look at. So there would be 2 more going up on this newly expanded PUD area. They would look the same, use the same materials, be consistent, densities meet code and meet comprehensive plan. And with that, there's no recommendations. Public hearing. There you go.
Mr. Buck. Then with that said, I do want to open this public hearing, properly posted and notified through the Green Bay Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested again in hearing public comments on this particular item. Any of you who wish to provide comments, if you would please, after your name has been called, state your address, whether you represent a group or association, and your comments or concerns. And I will ask first for anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this proposal, and then go to people who oppose and anybody who wishes to offer information. Okay, please confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal and avoid repeating what has already been said. Anybody then who would like to speak in favor of the proposal, if you would, Kevin, open the mics so we can find out where they are. I see.
Everyone is unmuted if anyone wishes to speak.
Okay, City of Green Bay, whoever that might be.
That's us. That's Shelby.
Okay, so Brian Johnson or William Hart, do either of you wish to speak on this issue? I think not. I think you were here for the previous item. Anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to the issue, please identify yourself to the proposal. Anybody who wants to give information, please do so now. And then I will follow the legal protocol here. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this issue? Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this issue? Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this issue? Hearing none, I declare the public hearing closed, and we will turn to item number 8 on the agenda. Surprise. Discussion and possible action of the request to amend zoning ordinance 1 through 19, Whitney Park Townhomes, to expand a planned unit development at the 200 block North Van Buren Street, submitted by GB Real Estate Investments, LLC, property owner. Anything to be added, Dave? Buck.
Only thing I would add is that this area has kind of been thought of as to be a townhome type development area. So you have the Whitney Park townhomes. You have this set of townhomes going in, the Whitney School townhomes. They all seem to be very, very successful so far, especially with interest. And we're happy to see the continued development on this Near East Side. So we are recommending approval of the request, subject to the PUD.
Thank you. And Director Vaughn, could you put up the map again of the area? I would be curious to have identified where the bridal church is.
Sure. The bridal church is right here on the corner.
In this corner. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for staff from the commissioners? I don't believe we have other people still remaining here who might wish to speak. Can you help me with that, Director Vonk?
Yeah, I'll take a look here.
I believe the petitioner might be on.
Yes, the petitioner is here.
GB.
GB, yes.
I'll bet. And I'll bet that is, ta-da-da-da, Garrett Bader. Would you wish to speak with us, Mr. Bader? If we wish to ask you, let me first of all ask to have the floor, a motion to open the floor. Sorry, I forgot the protocol here. From Commissioner Hanson, and a second from Alder Corpus Dax. All those in favor of opening the floor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. And Garrett Bader, would you care to share with us your reason for making this proposal?
Good evening. I'll be very brief because I'm reading the room and seeing the heads shaking and the shoulders shrugging. So here we go. One new building next to the existing two. David showed it perfectly. What you see is what you get. One more building, same look, same scope, same colors, same everything. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
I do have one. Are you also hoping to eventually pair to the south of this set?
The language of the development agreement does allow for another development in the future to the north of this building.
And actually, one other question. I noticed that you finally are not putting flat roofs on the top of this.
Well, yeah, and I actually like the flat roof, but the offset gable is a little more budget friendly. And given that it was offset, I was okay with that. I don't like a traditional gable, but the offset warmed me up to it.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Bader? Who convinced me that flat roofs were just fine. Thank you very much. Some while back. Okay, a motion to close the floor then. and return to regular order of business. I've got it from Mr. Hanson, and I've got a second from Alder Corpus Dax, and all those in favor of closing the floor. Any opposed? No. And so here we are. Any comments, or do we proceed directly to a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Alder Corpus Dax. A second, I think, from Commissioner Petruski. Did I read your body language right? Okay. Any further comments before we vote? I think we're all impressed by how successful these townhomes have been, Mr. Bader. All those in favor, I need to read the roll again. Alder Corpus Dax.
Aye.
And actually, I should also be reading what it is we're voting on. Nope, I can't find it. Can somebody help me, please?
Consideration of possible action on a request to amend zoning ordinance 119 to expand the planned unit development at 200 North Van Buren Street.
Thank you very much, Dave Buck. I appreciate your help. So again, given that, Alder Corpus Dax, Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Petruski.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
And myself, Vice Chair Sid Bremer. Aye. So we have a unanimous agreement on this, and it is approved.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, and thanks for hanging in with us so long, and thanks to everybody else for that purpose too. We next have on our agenda the director's report.
All right, thank you very much. Just a few updates. So we missed Plan Commission meeting, so I'm going back to the council meeting first on April 21st in terms of actions that were taken at that meeting. At that meeting, Paul Neumeier was appointed as the zoning administrator once again, so he'll be serving in that capacity until April 30th of 2022, and then Paul Van Kelster was reappointed as our chief building official. And then in terms of the Plan Commission, we had talked about the PUD for American Foods on Acme Street, the rezoning on Mary Hill Drive from what is residential to PI. That was the back behind Notre Dame Academy, the garage area, and then rezoning the areas, the 2900 block of Sitka Street. That was where we wanted to talk about the attached homes out in that area. So all of those, that report was approved. And then that went on to the council meeting on May 5th, where all of those items were read for second reading and all were adopted. And then also at the May 5th meeting, Mr. Miller was reappointed to this body. So he'll be serving until May 1st, 2023. And then I was reappointed as Director of Community and Economic Development. So stuck with me for another 2 terms. So that is my report.
Congratulations to all. It's good to have you on board and continuing. The next meeting is scheduled at least for May 26th, right?
Yes. So I figured we'd spare everyone for Memorial Day meeting, and we moved it to Tuesday. So it's the Tuesday after Memorial Day.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thanks, everybody, for your patience with this. And my thanks to the staff for their help as well. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Move
to adjourn.
No, we've got 3 motions. Petruski, Corpus Dax, and Hanson, which gives us 3 votes. Jake, we don't count anymore. Even if we vote against it, we're outvoted. Okay, we are adjourned.